Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual forum, Closing the Nature Equity Gap with Public Transit. Today's forum is hosted by the Outdoors Alliance for Kids, Latino Outdoors, the Nature for All Coalition, Green Latinos, the Wilderness Society, and the Sierra Club. My name is Jackie Ostfeld. I use she, her pronouns, and I am joining you today from Washington, D.C., the lands of the Nacotchtank and Piscataway people. I direct Sierra Club's Outdoors for All campaign, and I'm also a co-founder of the Outdoors Alliance for Kids, and I will be moderating our discussion today. If this last year, living through a pandemic, has taught us anything, it is just how vital public lands and open spaces have been for our physical and mental health. My kids were homebound for an entire year, as I'm sure many of yours were too, and the only thing that kept us sane was our ability to visit our nearby pocket parks. Everyone should be able to enjoy these benefits, but unfortunately, access to quality parks and green spaces is not universally shared. According to our friends at the Trust for Public Land, more than 100 million people in the United States do not live within walking distance of a park, a quality park, including 28 million children. Racist and discriminatory land use policies and practices, from forced migration to redlining to economic segregation, have shaped our communities and left a legacy of inequity when it comes to many basic services, including but not limited to access to parks and green spaces. As a result, many communities, Black and Brown communities, are 3 times less likely than white families to live in communities with nature access. Access to local parks and green spaces is further hampered or non-existent due to limitations of public transit. Many of our public lands are only accessible by private vehicles, and without a car, it's practically impossible for many communities to make the most of the health benefits and enjoyment provided by nature access. With inadequate park access and a lack of public transit, too many people are denied the positive benefits of spending time outdoors. And studies show that time spent outdoors can have a positive impact on our physical and mental health. Just 20 minutes in a park can help a child concentrate better in school. And as we begin to emerge from this COVID-19 pandemic, we're still in it, it's not over, but as we start to emerge, we really will need the benefits that nature bestows more than ever. And right now, they're just inaccessible to far too many people. Access to convenient transit options for everyone to parks and open spaces should be a right, not a privilege. That's why I'm so excited to be joined today by the Honorable Jimmy Gomez. Congressman Gomez represents California's 34th Congressional District, one of the most diverse and culturally rich districts in the country. He serves as the vice chair of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, sits on the powerful House Committee on Ways and Means, and serves as an assistant whip for the House Democratic Caucus. Congressman Gomez is also a member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, Congressional Progressive Caucus, and the Future Forum. Congressman Gomez is the lead author of the Federal Transit to Trails Act, which would expand transit links between parks and public lands and communities who have been historically denied access to nature. When this bill passes, it will be an important step towards closing the nature equity gap and making sure our parks and open spaces aren't exclusively the domain of people with the means or desire to own a car. We're so grateful to have you here with us today, Congressman. Thank you so much for being here and for your leadership. I'm going to turn it over to you. The floor is yours.
First, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Jackie, for that introduction. I just want to thank all the panelists for sharing your insights and perspectives on the upcoming panel. I know that you guys are working hard to ensure that we're not only combating climate change, but ensuring equity to our natural resources. Right now in DC, it's pretty hot. And on top of that, my air conditioning central air has been broken for about a week. So it still hasn't been repaired. So I'm also reducing my carbon footprint, not on purpose, but it's happening. But it does remind me of of just growing up in Riverside, California, where we didn't have air conditioning. And the way we kind of cooled off during the hot summer months was we would go to a park. It was either the Santa Ana River bottom, where we'd go out and play in the water. Some people did that, some other people didn't. Or we just go to the local park. And but I remember growing up, and but the one thing we didn't do was visit a lot of our national parks. Anything that had like a booth, anything that had a toll, anything that would cost money to go, and was too far since we never owned a new car growing up, was kind of prohibited because we couldn't risk trying to get to that national park and have our car break down in the process. So it's something that I know that if we can expose individuals and families who don't have access to these natural resources, we can change the perspective that these parks are for everyone. And just because a park or a national resource is public doesn't mean, as everybody knows, that it's accessible. And we've seen this time and time again, not only from like on the coast in California where some property owners tried to block access routes, or just for the simple facts of getting there and paying an entry fee. Those little things keep people from enjoying something that it is the inheritance of every single person that lives in this country. And one of the things that I wanted to do by introducing the Transit to Trails Act was to make sure that everybody feels like they have a stake in protecting those lands, has a stake in ensuring that other people have access to those lands, and understanding that it's not just for the wealthy, which I often thought that only rich people would go camping. It's something that something I grew up believing, but that's maybe just because of just the barriers that we saw, and every amount made a difference. Going to a movie that cost $2.50 was cost prohibitive when you have a family of 6. Right? Going to a park when you're struggling to save every penny, when you have an entry fee, is cost prohibitive. So one way we can do that is making sure that people can get to those parks through public transportation and at low, if not free, access. That can make a huge difference. And when we do that, we bring in more and more people to our cause. And that is, how do you protect green space? How do you protect our national monuments? How do you tell people that this is how we build that broader coalition that will fight for broad-based changes in our environmental policies, but also in how do we combat climate change. So I introduced the Transit to Trail Act with Senator Booker, and we've made progress, but it has been a fight. And I know that we're going to be able to get it passed. So I have some important news I'm proud to report. As the House debates the Invest in America Act, it will be considered as an amendment I introduced. And the amendment will enact the Transit to Trails Act as part of our work on the Surface Transportation Bill. So this was a big deal. It was a fight, and we had to go to leadership to get it deemed in order. So I would like to thank the panelists here today for their leadership and work in advancing this legislation, and especially Sharon Musa, who my staff tells me has been instrumental in this process. So thank you. Every bill, every piece of legislation or amendment brings us one step closer to equity when it comes to access to our national parks and our public spaces. And I have no doubt that this bill will help us also build that broad-based working class coalition to help take on even the bigger fights of climate change. And it is hard, but we can't do it in silos. We can't do it where some people feel all the benefits of our environmental laws and other people don't feel those benefits directly. So to all of you who are having this panel discussion, thank you so much. But we're one step closer. Doesn't mean that something might not go sideways by in the next couple of days where all of a sudden that amendment is not brought up. But so far, keep your fingers crossed. We're looking good for getting the Transit Trail Act enacted. So thank you so much for all your support.
Woo, thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Congressman. And we know you have to hop off, but we can't thank you enough for your leadership. I know it's a really busy day on Capitol Hill. And for our viewers who are joining us, we will share in the comments ways that you can help and reach out to your own member of Congress to help advance this really important legislation. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, now we are going to hear from our panelists. All of these partners who are on our call today are working to close the nature equity gap. All of the individuals and organizations have been making significant contributions in the communities where they operate. And I am inspired every time I learn more about each one, what everyone is up to. But before we jump in, let me just do a little bit of housekeeping. We're going to hear from all of our panelists in just a moment. And I have some questions for them, and I know y'all do too. So please go ahead and ask your questions in the comment section of our Facebook page, and we will try to answer as many of them as we can over the next 40 minutes or so. So, all right, let's jump in with some brief introductions and a short overview of your organization's work. So, Sharon, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all for being here, panelists and audience included. My name is Sharon. I work with the Wilderness Society, and I also work with Jackie on the Outdoor Alliance for Kids. In both of those organizations, I work on equitable access and the equitable access portfolios, including transit to trails, which Representative Gomez so kindly brought up. But I also generally work on outdoor access through other legislation like Every Kid Outdoors, which allows fourth graders across the country to access national parks for free, and Parks Job Equity Act, which also creates stimulus for the Land Water Conservation Fund, also allowing me to join the panel today.
Great, thanks so much, Sharon, for being here. Luis, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you, Jackie. Thank you again for the invitation to be a part of this panel. Thank you all for being here as well. My name is Luis Villa. I'm the Executive Director of Latino Outdoors. And Latino Outdoors is an organization that is dedicated to fostering outdoor engagement, particularly by Latinx communities, expanding the narrative of what it means to engage in the outdoors through our storytelling and communications, and also building outdoor leaders. Prior to Latino Outdoors, I've done a number of things. Started off as a case manager for youth in the probation system in Los Angeles, did community and economic development work, did conservation work, restoring tropical cloud forests and watersheds abroad. And now I'm here with Latino Outdoors, and throughout my nonprofit career, I think a guiding tenet or principle has been to contribute towards something that meets society's basic needs. And by basic, I mean the needs that we need to meet in order to live fulfilled, happy, and meaningful lives. And the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that we're doing at Latino Outdoors, and we're a part of, because we're a part of a bigger movement, is really at its core that. It's about managing our natural, cultural, and just overall societal resources so that everyone can lead meaningful, content, and happy lives. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, Luis, and thank you so much for all the great work of Latino Outdoors. Why don't we go to Brian and then Angel?
Sure. What a great day. Hello, everyone. Brian Matsumoto from Nature for All. We're based right here in Los Angeles County. And, our mission is to ensure equitable access for everyone in the county, no matter where you live, no matter your income, because we know that everyone deserves access to nature. And, just reflecting on what it means to grow up in such an urban area, right, compared to hundreds or thousands of years ago when our indigenous forefathers, like the Tongva, the Gabrielino, the Quiche, nature was in every integrated in every part of their day. And you think about life now where, a lot of your day is perhaps freeways, buses, cars, computers, indoors, and not very much of that is nature, right? And in just 1 or 2 generations, it's very easy for kids to lose all connection and awareness of the environment. And so we really believe that, everyone benefits when everyone has access to nature experiences. Obviously, you're not going to have environmental voters, people that tax themselves for clean air, clean water, clean climate, if folks don't grow up even knowing that we have wild rivers or forests right here in the midst of Los Angeles. So we work on park equity to make sure that our underserved communities have parks to begin as a stepping stone. We do leadership programs to really empower the community to advocate for these things. And we also work on transit to trails access programs. So I'll tell you more about a shuttle system that we are actively creating to the San Gabriel Mountains for LA. In the next section. Thanks.
Preview, little preview. Great, thanks so much, Brian. And Angel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Miss Jackie. Thank you for this awesome opportunity. My name is Angel Peña. I am zooming in from the stolen lands and broken treaties of the Jornada Mogollón down here on the southern border, here on the frontera. I am a proud father of 3, partnered to a frontline educator, and then I am the Green Latino Public Lands Advocate, where along with my colegas, we wake up every day to work. We wake up every day, work to develop and advocate for policies and programs that advance the missions of our members. Missions really centered around public lands, ocean, clean transportation, and climate change equity and justice. And me personally, I have the awesome opportunity to wear a couple of hats in the conservation space and value and prioritize authentic relationships. And so I am very excited about this panel and this trust that we have built together so we can leverage that and build the future that we all want to collectively see. And we know it's been too long. It's been too long. So thank you, Miss Jackie, and thank you all for the opportunity.
Thanks, Angel. You make me feel old with the Miss Jackie. It's really sweet.
I know. I'm sorry. Good parents and hard habits to break. So,
no, it's totally cool. It's cool. All right. Well, let's jump in then. Welcome all. And first, I'll just thank you again for being here. I am so grateful and honored and humbled to be in conversation with all of you. Y'all are the experts, and it's just so great to have you all in the same place at one time. So thank you for being here. Let's start with Latino Outdoors. I have a question for you, Luis. Latino Outdoors' mission is to inspire, connect, and engage Latinx communities in the outdoors and embrace cultura y familia. Can you tell us how the current state of public transit in the U.S. affects Latinx communities and their ability to get outdoors?
Me alone? Speak for everyone? Well, I mean, if we just start with the fact that nearly 1/3 of the U.S. population, 100 million people, don't live within walking distance of a park or a green space. And you know, it's not a huge leap to know that within that group, that population, not just Latinx communities, but communities of color and low-income communities are disproportionately affected, then we know that it's a difficult state, to say the least. And it's one that requires us to rethink how we deploy and manage public resources, including public transit and investment in public transit infrastructure, so that you know, we support or in support of building a more equitably accessible and inclusive outdoors. So yeah, the state is not good, but we're working hard to make it better.
What are some of the ways that y'all are working on access issues?
You know, I wish that I could say that Latino Outdoors is doing more than we are. I wish that, you know, we started as a blog. Our founder, Jose Gonzalez, started Latino Outdoors as a blog in 2013, which, you know, resonated with a number of people and it turned into this organization that we are now, this comunidad. But despite our growth and the increase in support that we are so appreciative of, you know, over the years, we're still relatively small, and you know, we don't have you know, an advocacy person on staff. We don't have a public or a government affairs person, dedicated government affairs person on staff. But what we do have is a growing national network of volunteers across the country, around 140 strong right now in 25 locations in the US. And our volunteers, in their own right, are exceptional advocates, activists, and they leverage the platform that Latino Outdoors provides to not only build awareness for the public transit resources that exist already, but to build public support for expanding, those public transit resources. So that's what we're doing.
Awesome. Thanks, Luis. Sharon, the Outdoors Alliance for Kids and its members, like many of the organizations on our call today and the Wilderness Society where you work, are working to close the nature equity gap for children, youth, and families. Can you tell us a little bit about how children are impacted by a lack of access, and also what are some of the ways that Oak is working to bridge the gap between kids and nature?
Yeah, absolutely. More and more people are living in cities, and even Representative Gomez's anecdote about his time growing up in Riverside and playing in the Santa Ana River is a perfect example of the ways that people used to be connected to the land and used to use the land around them. And that access is really critical, not only in having a connection to nature, but there's been numerous studies that have pointed out how important children's access to outdoor play is, both in terms of their development, their academic achievement, the creation of community cohesion, and just the acknowledgement of people who live around you and how important that is. But beyond that as well, it's incredibly important to families. And I think that this past year and the pandemic have really demonstrated to a lot of people and a lot of families how important it is to have a place that you can take your kid outside if they don't have the opportunity to be going into school, for example, every day, or going to camp, or going to a daycare and interacting with other children in that way. And even as adults, it's really important to get outside and access nature. I, for myself, often try and work out on my balcony or in the front yard or in the back patio, etc., as well, just to try and get as much access to nature as possible. But the organizations that I work with, such as the Outdoor Alliance for Kids and the Wilderness Society, all have various legislation that they work on, which I kind of touched on briefly in my introduction, that increase access to the outdoors. Of course, there's Gomez's Transit to Trails, which would create public transportation options so that local communities can build transit connectors to the parks, green spaces, trails, etc., in their own backyard, and in the pocket parks, as someone said here, in the pocket parks that exist around them. But there's other pieces of legislation like the Every Kid Outdoors Act, which, as I said in the introduction, allows fourth graders across the country to access for free national parks and the national park system. Therefore, hopefully motivating not only those kids, but especially the classes that they're involved in and their families to also get out to the national parks and enjoy those natural amenities around them. And here at the Wilderness Society, we have been working on the Parks, Jobs, and Equity Act, which was introduced by Representatives Barragan, as well as Senators Padilla and Hickenlooper, and would provide a $500 stimulus to the Land Water Coalition Fund, which, as Brian brought up, I believe, also just creates better access and creates funds for the creation of parks in people's communities. And for many people, you have to take a bus or drive, walk, etc., a long distance to get to a local park, a local trailhead, etc. But funds like this could create opportunities for people to have pocket parks or have access in their own backyard.
Great, thanks, Sharon. And what you said about just kids getting outdoors resonating a lot with me. It's been a long year for many of us, and for those of us with kids at home, I think all agree that, I'm sure everybody else's kids were climbing the walls just like mine, and having those outlets to get outdoors has been gold if you're able to do that. So thank you. Brian, you've got some really incredible work going on the ground around specific projects. The Nature for All Coalition has really been at the forefront of local efforts to expand equitable access to nature in the San Gabriel Mountains and throughout Los Angeles. What's the public transit situation like in the Los Angeles area, and how would residents benefit from expanding it?
Yeah, thanks for that. We've been working with a ton of partners all across the region because it's a huge issue. Obviously LA is a huge area, but just to throw some numbers at you that are nationally, relatable, Los Angeles County, 50% of our residents are considered park poor. So that's, can't walk a quarter mile to a nearest park. Highly disadvantaged communities with overlays of, health impacts, lower life expectancy, diabetes, obesity, et cetera. What does that do to a population and to children? Luckily, we also have some awesome opportunities. Los Angeles is blessed with nature. We have a coastline, regional parks, and the San Gabriel Mountains, which are 70% of LA County's open space. So that's super significant. If you zoom out of a map, and it's kind of unbelievable how much land the San Gabriel Mountains are. So that's the Angeles National Forest and the San Gabriel Mountains National Monument. So obviously we should be connecting folks to that open space, and there are 0 public transit routes currently into the mountains. So that's a really significant gap, right? We've invested so much in public transportation and public lands, and then there's just this short gap where people can't get to where they need to go. So we're actively trying to solve that gap with a shuttle system that we call the LA San Gabriel Mountains Urban Shuttle System. There's a number of routes that folks have been working on, and the 2 projects I'm working on are the blue and the pink routes indicated to the top. So for those who need orientation, where all the lines converge, where it says Los Angeles, that is downtown LA, Union Station. All this is our metro rail system, where the red, the purple, the blue, the gold line and converge. And so we can get folks up from, Vernon, East LA, Koreatown, really highly urbanized areas without park access, and get them up to the gold line, which comes so close to the mountains, but doesn't deliver people there. And so if you can get to where that blue line starts in Pasadena Memorial Park Station, we can put people on a bus. We call that the Mount Wilson Express vision, head up Highway 2 and hit a bunch of stops. Switzer Falls, Eaton Saddle Trailhead, Haramachna American Indian Cultural Center, and finally Mount Wilson Observatory, which is heritage historical site, Albert Einstein, the universe expanding, huge discoveries and huge vistas of LA. Over on the pink side, that would come up from Azusa from the Gold Line, go up to the San Gabriel Canyon, which is the most popular river areas that our families visit in the summertime to experience the wild rivers of the San Gabriel. So, realistically, just adding a few buses to the transit system isn't a massive ask. We're not needing to create entire rail lines. These routes exist, but we just need to push transit and connect up to the existing systems that we have so we can get folks outdoors. And so exciting news is that we have a lot of regional support from our county supervisors, Mayor Garcetti. We have funding now to start to begin shuttle stops even. And the Forest Service now has elevated this all the way to the top. And our newest information is that Chantry Flats, which is one of the most popular hiking areas, hopefully will be receiving a shuttle improvement area in the next few years.
So cool. Thanks for sharing that, Matt Brian. It reminds me of some of the work that our Minnesota chapter of the Sierra Club, the North Star chapter, has been working to create a transit to green space program and leading outings, showing folks there's some regional buses around around the area where folks can already get on the bus and go see several parks, but people just don't even know about it. And so they've been creating maps and leading outings to help kind of spotlight the opportunities that people can have to get outdoors through public transit, whether it's because they don't have access to a car or because they're interested in reducing their reliance on fossil fuels too. The work in LA is just incredibly inspiring. Thank you. Wow. Angel, Green Latinos has been at the forefront of environmental movement building in the Latinx communities, and in particular, engaging folks in advocacy. How does expanding public transit fit into your advocacy?
Yes, absolutely. Let me make sure I'm not muted. No, I'm not. Thank you. This reintroduction of the transit to trails idea by Congressman Gomez and Senator Booker, really simply recognizes just how intertwined our public lands, trails, and generally the environment are with issues centered around justice, race, and equity. And Congressman Gomez's story really resonated with me. I mean, I grew up in a family of labor workers. So when one parent was gone, or the car was gone, one parent was working and the car was home, then it was gone again with the other parent working. And I can tell you, I did not grow up with access to the outdoors, right? The last thing they wanted to do after hours was take me back outside. And that story is not unique to me, right? Or the Congresswoman. I know my neighbors and the friends I grew up with. This is just the way life was. And that reality and that lived experience is why it is so important for us to push for policies that create new opportunities for everyone, right? To reach parks, waters, oceans, rivers, public lands, trails, and benefit from them. COVID, I think it was you, Ms. Jackie, COVID has only underscored how important safe and equitable access is important to local frontline communities. And so it's something we wake up thinking about every day, is how do we systematically break down barriers with our partners and with our Green Latino members so that we raise all ships, right? And so that we're able to leverage all the momentum that Brian and Sharon and Luis are doing, and able to take us and move that needle in the right direction. So exciting stuff to be part of such a team.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about how you've been activating people to advance this issue and maybe other outdoor equity and conservation policies?
Yeah, I was thinking about that question when earlier, and I can sum it up in 2 words. It's just authenticity and relationships. I can tell you, Green Latinos was very proud to be part of the initiatives that took place over in New Mexico. We're the first of its kind. New Mexico Outdoor Equity Fund became an idea, or was first an idea and then born into reality. And now we know our friends over in California, our friends over in Colorado have been able to create their own outdoor equity program that breaks down barriers, because fuel, just getting gas in the truck or the Jeep or the car is something very real. And Green Latinos acknowledges that a vision without resources is little more than a hallucination. And so, which is why we've been working with our federal partners to think of what the outdoor future can look like. This initiative, the Fund for Underrepresented Tribal, Urban, and Rural Equity. Those folks in DC love their acronyms. So future, we gave them one. But this Outdoor Future Initiative, whose entire definition of success is to not only incentivize programs, the amazing programs that are happening in California, Colorado, and New Mexico, but really allow them to hit the ground running, right? So that the rubber can meet the road day one, and we can together break down these barriers that only put our future generations in the driver's seat. I think it was Brian, or maybe it was Miss Sharon, who kind of alluded to the fact that the best thing we can do is just get our kiddos out there. And then after that, man, forget the talking points. You just build real memories and lasting relationships that we can, where we can work together, right? To move needles. But I'll stop there, Miss Jackie. Thank you for the question, for sure.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm also going to invite all of you, if y'all have any questions for each other, feel free to maybe just put your hand up and jump in, because You're all doing such great work, and I'm sure inspiring each other as you talk. So do feel free to do that. I'm going to move to just one question from the audience and invite viewers to continue sharing questions in the comment section. But I think there's interest in knowing if anybody in this group is doing work in the Southeast, getting folks outdoors. Luis, I saw you come off mute. Go for it.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was no. I'm just kidding. We're a volunteer-powered organization, and we have, for lack of a better word, chapters around the country, right, that are volunteer-led. And as any volunteer-run or powered organization, might tell you, volunteers go through cycles, right? They have life changes, and so they come in and out, right, of levels of activity with the organization. And we used to have a presence in Florida, but we no longer do. However, in the pipeline, we do have interest from a group of folks that might be are interested in creating something in, I think it's North Carolina. So it's not South Carolina. I see the comment here. But that's about as close as we're getting right now to the Southeast. So I wish I had more to offer there.
You saw SC and thought South Carolina. I saw SC and thought Sierra Club. Everyone's question different.
Perspective.
I can also share from Sierra Club. One of the programs that is just so wonderful that we have here is called our Inspiring Connections Outdoors program. It is a volunteer-led program of volunteers who lead outings for young people across the country. And we have, again, like Luis said, very similar for Sierra Club. Our volunteer leadership ebbs and flows, and the pandemic was very, very hard on, I think, all of our outings programs. But we do have some programs. I know we have one in Atlanta, we have one in Miami, and potentially other programs in the Southeast. And if you look up Sierra Club Inspiring Connections Outdoors, you should be able to find a list of where we have active groups. Anybody else operating in Southeast? Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I just wanted to, that person's comment was also asking about, how do I connect with diverse youth and get them outdoors? So I just want to recognize my colleagues like Roberto Morales, who works in Sierra Club, and his Nearby Nature program does exactly that. Takes youth from the city outdoors. And also my colleague Araceli Hernandez, who is a Latino Outdoors leader, she runs bus programs in the Valley to show people, look, you can get to these places. I would definitely encourage the person who wrote in to partner with organizations in the community, right? You don't have to just seek out diverse youth on your own. There are organizations working with diverse youth. They want to partner with you, and combining those forces really helps make these things happen. I do just want to put out just a huge thank you to all the partners and Congressman Gomez for this Transit Trails Act, because I want to recognize how difficult it is to find funding to do these types of shuttle programs currently. That's the whole reason why we're so excited about it. With the example of our shuttle efforts, we're kind of in the build it and they will come phase, because it's a little easier to find capital projects money typically, right? Government agencies or grants can do infrastructure, but you want to run a bus, you want to get some youth rangers hired up, you want to have people having experiences. It's really difficult to find funding for that stuff. And so that programming and operations money is really key. And at least some of that is what the Transit to Trails Act will do to make that block grant from the Department of Transportation. So I just want to recognize that and even show the potential of this within Jimmy Gomez's district. He's in the core of Los Angeles, at the epicenter of where all our rail lines come. And so we did some GIS analysis. 53% of his constituents can walk out of their door in a quarter mile to 23 different metro stations, and they would be able to exit out into the mountains if we have the shuttle system going. So that kind of opportunity, we're really trying to sell this vision, right? These shuttles could be zero emission. They could be here in time for the LA Olympics. Like, it's a really great vision, and we hope the momentum keeps building.
I just wanted to add to what Brian was saying about partnering with local community serving organizations that may not be outdoor engagement organizations per se, but focus on issues like community health, for example. We know, especially through this experience with the pandemic, that outdoor engagement has been elevated as a priority for a lot of communities around the country. And so even if an organization is not explicitly focused towards outdoor engagement, but they are focused on other issues that are related, just partnering with them, they may not even need any prompting, to include outdoor engagement as part of their programming. So there's a real opportunity here that has been heightened by the pandemic and the other challenges that we've faced over the last year plus. And it's important to take advantage of the way the table's been set.
I had something to add, Ms. Jack, if that's okay, or Sharon, I did. That's thumbs up. Yeah, totally couldn't agree with Mr. Brian Luis. For me personally, it was like I got started in this game because I wanted to get everybody outside, and I quickly learned that an individual, an organization, or even as a community, it's hard to do, right? So I always go back to look at the tools in my tool belt and policy, and policymakers seem to be something that we can make happen, right? Or we can force them to at least ask the right questions if we're strategic and focused enough to do so. And so, when I read the question in here, it says, in a rural wetland area with no public transportation, I would love to work with this person. I don't know if we can share information or how that can work, but there's words are powerful, and a strongly worded opinion piece, highlighting, elevating, and amplifying that voice that can resonate with that one policy maker. It could be a city councilor, county commissioner. In South Carolina, I'm not sure how it's broken down over there, but I think there's some real next steps that we can take to challenge this, because a rural wetland area with no public transportation, are you kidding me? Get out of here. I feel like that's something we can at least make sure that the right folks are begging the question. So I'll stop there. And I think it's a solid question, kind of breaks my heart. And I think we have some real effective ways to take action. So if it makes sense, I'd love to be connecting.
Great, thanks. And what a perfect transition. And I was going to ask Brian if you could share a little bit about how, how folks can advocate for expanded public transit at the local level in their communities. Can you share a little insight about how you've all been doing that in LA?
Sure. And Angel really did touch on it. The people who hold the power to provide this access are usually the transit agencies, the elected officials, the councils of governments that make these decisions, and they need to hear that this is really important. I think a lot of people out there think like access to nature is nice. It's like some sort of luxury, and we really have to move people with the message that it's not a nicety, it's a necessity, right? Outdoor access changes people's lives. We're talking about public health, mental health access, especially in an urban environment, where people may not even have a backyard or a park to go to. It's their four walls and them. So obviously in the pandemic, we know nature access is critical, but also that whole pathway, how are people supposed to turn into environmental stewards without experiences and access to green jobs, environmental education, and that whole workforce opportunity as well is really huge. We advocate to Metro, our municipal transit agencies, so that they understand this is something that's critical to us. We convene kind of steering committees to do the planning of this shuttle system in our region. We communicate with our county supervisors so that they hear, the community loved the pilot project shuttles that we ran with partners a few years ago, they want those to become permanent. They don't want a 3-week shuttle to show up in their neighborhood. Everyone's like, yay, that was wonderful. And where did it go? You know, they want these things up and running because these are their public lands and they want access. I think, you know, just sharing the personal story for an individual person is really critical. You know, I think a lot of people assume, for example, since I work in this field now, oh, you were a born hiker. Like, not at all. You know, I grew up in San Gabriel Valley, like most people in LA, in view of the mountains, but really nobody took me there. My dad always called it the hills. And so if it weren't for my one high school friend, Thomas, that said, let's go to Sturtevant Falls, I may never have known that we have mountains, right? You know, instantly deep in a canyon covered by trees with flowing streams. It was really shocking. And it still has been like a decades-long journey to understand all the complexity of nature that we have just in this area. But that's what makes a place special. That's what makes a child grow into an adult that loves and cares and wants to protect the environment. So without all those pieces and access, you know, we can't get there.
Can I just say something really quickly? Just very quickly. I mean, you're right, Brian. Sharing stories, personal stories is so important. Congressman Jimmy Gomez started off by sharing his story. You just shared yours. Angel, you've shared yours. I also grew up in Los Angeles, in Linwood, California, right next to the freeway, the 710 freeway, and the concrete channel that is the LA River in view of the San Gabriels. And you share your story enough, other people will hear it, it'll resonate with their own stories, and you build the critical mass, you know, that's needed in order to build the political will, you know, that's needed for change. So stories are very important.
Couldn't agree more. Very, very critical, and love the work that y'all are doing to lift up stories, Luis. Tell me what it's called again?
Yo Cuento Outdoors.
Outdoors. Check it out.
It's the name of one of our 3 programs. And so Yo Cuento Outdoors is our storytelling and communications program. Excuse me. And Yo Cuento is the Spanish phrase for I matter, I count, but it also means I tell a story. So.
Yep. Love it. So thank you all so much. We are nearing the end of our time here, but I want to, I know we didn't get into too many specifics about the Federal Transit to Trails Act, but I did want to share for folks who are thinking about this work at the local level that, you know, when we pass the Transit to Trails Act, the idea would be that there would be federal resources to match your local dollar. So I believe that the federal government would cover almost up to 80% for public transit in to support projects like the ones that Brian's talking about in Los Angeles. So Sharon, can you tell us, you know, folks are tuning in today, how can folks help ensure the passage of the Federal Transit to Trails Act?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to advocate for the passage of this act, like everyone in this panel has already been saying, is really to reach out to your local representatives, to reach out to your congresspeople, reach out to your senators and say, hey, I live in this district. I struggle to reach, or I struggle to have access to the mountains, or I struggle to have access to a local trail. And I think that there should be better public transportation access to green spaces in this community. In fact, the bill, Transit to Trails, is actually advocating for better funding for local communities to reach and access outdoors in their own spaces and in their own ways. I think that you should join as a co-sponsor. I think that you should support this bill, or here's a little bit of information about the bill, at least so you can be informed and aware about what the bill does. But like everyone here has really highlighted, the best way to do that is just to use yourself as an anecdote and talk about your own story and how difficult it is for you in your own community. No one is going to be able to speak to what it's like to live in your own community better than you can. And so I of course would love any support that people can provide. And if you would like to connect to me, I'm assuming, Jackie, that maybe our emails or contact information will be shared via information in these lives, but you're also welcome to provide any support. And if you want to reach out to me to know how you can support on the federal level as well, I would be happy to provide any sort of information, one-pagers, fact sheets, etc., that would be helpful to you in advocating also for yourself.
Great, thanks, Sharon. It looks like we do have one more question in here. I'll ask it. Maybe if just one person can answer it, anyone who wants to. How would the public transit system to the outdoors overcome financial barriers for low-income communities?
I'd like to just chime in really quickly. And this has been mentioned before during the conversation. The Transit to Trails Act is part of a comprehensive approach. It's not a siloed approach. Sharon mentioned earlier the Parks, Jobs, and Equity Act, which would provide $500 million in stimulus to improve parks, to create jobs related to parks and green spaces, and foster equitable access to the parks. The Outdoor Equity Fund in New Mexico was mentioned, and that's been replicated in California and in Colorado and elsewhere. So, and it's going to be hopefully replicated nationally, with the Outdoor Future Initiative. So this is part of a comprehensive approach, and we can't lose sight of that. And that is how you address some of the financial barriers that low-income communities face.
Thanks, Luis. Couldn't agree more. And so, as just for a final question for all of you, or for anyone who wants to take it, sounds like there's a lot going on already, right? Both at the state level and the federal level. But if our elected leaders could take further action to help close the nature equity gap, what would you like to see?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to mention also how all of this outdoor equity stuff is, it should be a really bipartisan issue. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from folks across the aisle and council people that I speak to that are more on the conservative side. When you start to talk about screen time versus green time, they really perk up. Like every family, every parent out there, this and knowing what this is doing to their kids and to us, honestly, as adults, is a big issue. And the more you talk about that, we need balance in our urban lives. And the more screen time you have, the more green time you need as well. And that, honestly, our government investments need to increase our nature experiences because our technological and urban experiences have increased so much that we need that balance in our lives. And there are a slew of benefits also with these types of shuttle programs. There can be local economic benefits because usually you're running a shuttle system through somewhere with hungry and thirsty hikers that often can go into a local small business area. So for our shuttle systems that we're trying to create, Old Town Pasadena, downtown Azusa, like take note, chambers of commerce, you should be supporting these shuttle systems in your areas. The city of Duarte, they were the first to run their own shuttle program, Transit to Trails, on their own dime with transportation funds. And they're willing to do it once we can get Fish Canyon Trail restored again, because they know they can run that bus through their downtown district and support businesses. So that, along with, saving public health costs, increasing education and workforce opportunities, there's a whole slew of bipartisan benefits with this act.
That's big picture thinking by the city of Duarte right there.
If I might also hop in on this question. I hate to sound like a broken record, but I think that bills like the Transit to Trail Act are really getting to the heart of what is needed, or at least taking the first step at getting to what is needed in bridging this equity gap. Because of the fact that Transit to Trails Act creates these funds that local communities can use in their own way. And as I said, each community member is going to know what is going to be most useful to them in their own community. If it's a metro line, if it's a ferry, if it's a bus route, if it's a shuttle, the community members will know best. So I think that these elected officials, the further action that they could take is just listening to frontline community members about how funds could be used to create resources in their own communities and bridge the gap that they're already seeing. Like someone else here has already said, the solutions are not going to be one size fits all, although the problems are ubiquitous. But like I said, frontline community members are going to be able to speak to how to solve those issues best.
Great. Thank you all so much. We are just at the top of the hour here, so I'm going to wrap us up and just say that so awesome to have all of you here today and hear all of your perspectives. You know, the outdoors can be a powerful force in creating healthier, more equitable, more resilient society. And we've never needed the outdoors more than we do now. And so it's so essential that our representative support Transit to Trails Act and other park equity, outdoor equity bills. You know, as we're talking right now, the House Rules Committee is meeting to discuss Transit to Trails, which is amendment number 181 to the Invest in America Act, our surface transportation reauthorization bill. And your advocacy on this legislation and other critical park equity bills could mean all the difference in helping to close the nature equity gap and ensure all people have access to the benefits of nature. So I do want to invite our viewers to contact your members of Congress right away. Right now, before you hop offline, our team will put an action alert in the comments on Facebook, so you can do it really simply. I want to thank Congressman Gomez and his incredible team for being here with us today. I want to thank Luis, Sharon, Angel, Brian. Thank you all so much for joining today's forum and sharing your expertise. And I also just want to give a shout out to the behind the scenes folks who you aren't seeing today, but who are really doing a lot of this work. Carly Hill has done all the digital strategies, and Barath for getting this Facebook event live. Ian Bricky from our comms team, Roberto Morales, who's doing all our work in Southern California, and Janie Rasmussen from our Sierra Club Outdoors for All team. Thank you all for the behind the scenes work to bring together today's forum and also to help with our general advocacy and programmatic work to get people connected with the outdoors. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Please have a wonderful and safe summer, and we'll hope to see you again soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks all.